Hobart School of Welding Technology presents Training in Oxy-Acetylene Welding, Cutting, and Brazing. Topic number 23, Job Practice. Single V-groove weld, butt joint, pipe welding, 5G position. The objective of this topic is to be able to produce quality single V-groove pipe welds in the 5G welding position. The finished pipe weld should be even and slightly convex, fusing well into both walls of the pipe, and should penetrate to form a slight reinforcement. On a blueprint, the symbol for this weld is nearly identical to the symbol used for the single V-groove topics, except that a small circle is drawn at the junction of arrow and line to indicate welding all the way around the joint. Material: 3-inch diameter, schedule 40 pipe. Filler metal, 1/8 inch diameter, RG45. Equipment: oxygen and acetylene supply and equipment, protective clothing, gloves and goggles, striker and pliers, tip orifice, size number 53, tip cleaner, number 53. Gas pressures: oxygen setting 8 psi, acetylene setting 8 psi. Flame neutral. The workpiece for this job practice is made of 2 pipe nipples, beveled and tack welded together to form a V-groove joint with a 1/8 inch root opening. The experience gained from welding V-groove butt joints in the overhead, vertical, and flat positions forms the foundation for pipe welding. 5G position means that the axis of the pipe is horizontal and welding is done without turning the pipe. The weld is started at the bottom, or 6 o'clock position, and continued to the top, or the 12 o'clock position. The other half of the pipe is then welded in a similar manner from 6 to 12 o'clock. Welding on the lower portion of the joint compares to overhead V-groove welding on 3/16 inch thick plate. As the pipe weld approaches the halfway point, or 3 o'clock position, the technique is comparable to vertical V-groove plate welding. And as the weld approaches the 12 o'clock position, it is like flat position welding. The important point in pipe welding is to start with the technique used for overhead welding, gradually change to vertical up technique, then gradually change to flat position technique. To form the workpiece for this exercise, bevel the edges of 2 pipe nipples at a 30-degree angle. Be sure to remove burrs. Then place the nipples in a welding fixture to hold them in alignment for forming a 60-degree V-groove joint. Space the root opening to 1/8 inch with a spacer wire, and then deposit 4 tack welds, each 1/4 inch long, at the 3, 6, 9, and 12 o'clock positions. Now, clamp the workpiece with the axis of the pipe in a horizontal position so that the bottom of the pipe is at eye level and one of the tack welds is at the 6 o'clock position. Use a 90-degree work angle and a 5 to 10-degree push travel angle, positioning the torch about 1/8 inch back from the end of the 6 o'clock tack weld. Hold the filler rod in the plane of the joint and angle it about 20 degrees below horizontal. Maintain the angle between the filler rod and torch throughout the weld. Form the keyhole and add filler metal at the leading edge of the puddle, filling the small cavity at the root of the tack weld. Move at an even rate to maintain the keyhole and to fill about 2/3 of the groove depth, keeping the travel angle at 5 to 10 degrees push. At the 3 o'clock tack weld, raise the filler rod angle and move the torch in circles to melt the end of the tack weld and the root portion of the bevel. When the area melts, add filler metal to properly fuse into the tack weld. Now, begin the 3 to 12 o'clock weld segment by starting 1/8 inch behind the crater of the 3 o'clock tack weld. Use the same torch and rod angles and technique as before. When you are finished, repeat the procedure on the other half of the pipe. This first pass will fill out 2/3 of the joint and penetrate well into the root and the joint faces. To begin the cover pass, start the weld at the 6 o'clock position with the same work and travel angles as before. Hold the filler rod in contact with the center of the root bead and angle it 20 degrees up from the pipe surface. Move the torch with a side-to-side motion, keeping the steps in even increments. Use the same welding technique and torch angles for the 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock positions on both sides. The finished weld should be even, slightly convex, and fuse well into both the root bead and the joint edges with a face width of 1/2 inch. The tie-in at the 12 o'clock position should be filled to the level of the bead. If you have trouble producing a good weld, it will result mainly from incorrect torch angles. Inspect each weld to determine the cause of any bad areas and correct the problem as you continue practice on your next weld.